Hey there, Entre fans. In today's Click Fix, we're going to walk through step by step on how to build an actual booking widget just like this. This is, you may recognize, is similar to what you can see on something like Calendly. And you'll be able to have people go ahead and book a time on your calendar. Now, the advantage, of course, is that with ClickFix, this is a paid feature, but you can have unlimited calendars. Right now, we support Google Calendars with plans to support Outlook in the very near future. But you can have unlimited calendars for unlimited users, and this is all done by using a simple form field on the front end with Ontraport, and then tying that into whatever Google Calendar you want to use on the back end. So without further ado, let's jump right in and let's take a look at how we build something like this. So the first place you're going to want to start is in the ClickFix dashboard, or you can see that it's app.clickfix.io/v2, which is where you'll go to once you've logged in. I'm going to assume that you've done all of the start here things, like adding your domain, because obviously it's not going to work unless you have that added. You've installed the Chrome plugin. You have, or you know that you need to use this script on the actual landing page, which we'll see a little bit later on. And that, of course, you are familiar with opening the documentation, which for this particular feature we're going to be referring to down the road. And then, of course, if you have any issues or you can't get something to work, you can always contact us here at support. Now, being an advanced feature, we also need to make sure that we have two additional things set up. And these are under keys and permissions. We want to make sure that you have at least one Google key set up, and you'll need to do this for each account that controls the Google calendars that you want to use. In my particular case, when I'm using my agency account, the Healthy ROI account, I have maybe 10 or 15 different Google calendars that are tied to that. With ClickFix, I only have one. So depending on what your setup is, you may need to set up one or more of these Google keys in order to be able to add you and anybody else's Google calendars that you want to the mix. It's very simple. You just go ahead and you can just put in whatever names you want. Right now, it's just Google, but later on, depending on when you're watching this, you'll see that there will be additional providers. And then for the sake of making things easy, I would probably just leave it all unselected, right? Because if you leave it empty, then it'll allow everything here on this list. You'd click on active and you'd click on submit. It would take you through some pop-ups just to have you sign into your Google account and then authorize ClickFix to be able to go ahead and navigate things on your behalf. I've already done that, so we're going to skip that one. Then after you have the Google key set up, the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that under keys and permissions you have your Ontraport API keys. And most accounts will allow you to only have one API key. So if you've already done this for another feature, you'll see it here in the list and you don't need to do anything. If not, then you're going to want to go ahead and do the same kind of deal. Go ahead and just give it a name, and the application ID and application key are things that you would find inside of Ontraport under Administration, Integrations, Ontraport API Instructions and Key Manager. And once you have that information, you'll go ahead and paste it in here under Application ID and Application Key. Make sure you select Active and click on Submit, and then it'll appear over here. So once you have the basic setup stuff ready to go, next thing I would recommend that you do is to open the clickfix.io documentation, which is doc.clickfix.io. If you start to type in schedule, which is what we're going to be doing here, you're going to see that there are links to two different sections, and we're going to be using this when we get a little bit further into the build here. After you have the ClickFix side of things ready to go, jump into your Ontraport account, and let's go ahead and set up some fields, some custom fields here. We're just going to do this all from scratch just so you can see that we are in fact doing this live. And let's call this scheduler. Right. Doesn't matter, I like to use different tabs for my different projects. You can do this all inside of the normal contact information tab if you prefer to have it there. But I like to break things out just so it's easier for me to manage later on. We're going to have a new section, and let's just say this is going to be demo scheduler. And let's go ahead and add a field. Now, the type of a lot of the things that you're going to see a little bit later are going to be optional, like adding add to calendar links to the contact profile. But the one field that you definitely have to have, of course, is a date and time field, which is going to be the field that we transform into what we call a better field, and that is to set up that calendar scheduler widget. So let's call this one demo scheduler. Doesn't matter if you keep this all same together, camel case, however you want to do it. Later on, we're going to be using the actual absolute value of the field, but we definitely want to make sure it's whatever name you want to give it, and date and time. Click on save. Now, for the sake of this demo, I am going to also create fields for things like the actual add to calendar links that we include in an email. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up long text fields for each of these. All right, so long text, and this one is going to be called Google 2. And the reason you saw this error here is because I already have test fields with this name, so it doesn't like it when I have the same name. So let's just call these number 2 here, Google 2. I'm going to do one for Yahoo 2 as well. Long text. This is very important that it's long text. I'm going to have one for Outlook, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in Outlook.com so that I remember that I need to use this in the merge fields later on. Long text. And we're going to set one up for ICS, and ICS is simply kind of a, let's call it a generic format that can be used in several different types of calendars. For example, this is the type of link that you would use if you're using Apple calendars to add it to your Apple calendar. All right, so with those, I believe that we are done. So we're going to go ahead and click on save. We have all the fields that we need set up here. And click on save. And just for the sake of making things simple down the road, we are going to go ahead and set up a page that we'll have to edit later on, but as soon as it's done saving, we'll go ahead and set up our landing page. So that's done. Comes back to here, we're going to go ahead to pages. I'm going to select a new page, and this is just a simple demo page, so we won't go too far into all the different ways that you could set this up from a visual perspective. So let's just call this demo scheduler. This. I'm just going to deblock for now. We're going to drag on a couple of different form fields. Now, just like in the case of most other forms that you create here on Ontraport pages, the thing that we always need to be able to tie this to the proper person is going to be the email field. So we're going to go ahead and put that on there now. Let's go. Just grab a different style, just like that. Grab that style. And then we need a couple more fields here, right? So make sure that is a required field. Next one that I want on here for sure is going to be the actual schedule field, right? So what do we call that? Demo scheduler. Right. And for this particular one, we don't need to keep the label. Well, we'll see why a little bit later on, but for now we'll leave it here just so we can refer to it on the screen here. And the next fields we're going to go ahead and put on, and this is just strictly for us to be able to reference them a little bit down the road, is the Google and Yahoo 2 and the Outlook 2 and the ICS 2. All right. So we have all these fields on the page. I'm going to go ahead and drop a submit button. I'm going to go ahead and publish this page. Just a placeholder domain here. All right, good. So we're going to leave that page alone. We'll come back to it a little bit later. But we kind of have the base framework that we need to create the campaign done now. Actually, one more thing we're going to do here. This is just a personal preference. But when you're working with things that have forms in them, if you don't change this block name, then sometimes it gets a little confusing later on when you're trying to reference it in triggers and things like that inside of campaigns. So it is always good practice to go ahead and name this. So let's call this demo schedule form, for example. And so once that's done, now I can publish again. I'm going to leave the page editor open, and I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to go into Ontraport, and now let's go ahead and build a campaign that is going to tie this all together, and that's where the magic happens. All right, so once this loads, we're going to go ahead into Contacts Campaigns, and build a new campaign. And we'll start from scratch. And we're going to call this scheduler. And if we want to, we can go ahead and place a trigger now, since we do have that form ready to go, or you can just build it here if for some reason you skipped making the page. But we're going to go ahead, we already have it built, so let's go do this trigger, and we're going to say a form is submitted, and we're going to go into the pages here. Then we'll schedule can, and this is the name of the block, so this would say block name if you hadn't named it. And so that's good. We don't want them to ignore this trigger because let's imagine for the real world use case, there are two options here, right? So in one use case, you would be building this out, for example, for somebody who was booking a free discovery call. If you wanted to limit this to just one discovery call, well, then of course you could ignore this trigger and have another trigger fire that says, hey, listen, you've already done your discovery call. Contact us some other way if you want to talk more about it, or something like that. But let's say that this is more kind of a support widget or something that you want people to be able to book anytime they need to. So of course you would then say move here when this is triggered, so that way the automation fires again. Click on done here, and we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to go ahead and get a little bit into the weeds here, right? And so this is the part that is going to be maybe slightly confusing for some people. This is the part that a lot of people are kind of afraid to play with, but webhooks are actually quite simple once you get the hang of them. But for now, let's go ahead and just set this up as a skeleton. We're going to have eventually add 2 webhooks in here. All right, we'll come back and edit those in a second. And then we're going to actually send an email to people as well. Once they've gone through this process, we're going to send them a confirmation email that will then have the add to calendar links in it. Some people may choose to separate these into 2 different campaigns. It's purely up to you how you want to build this out. This way will work, but separating them into separate campaigns will also be fine. And for now, this is just going to keep it simple, so we're going to go ahead and just do an end here, right? So we're going to save this. And now we're going to go back to ClickFix, and we're going to actually set up our calendar. And the way we do that is here on the dashboard, we come into Better Fields, and we're going to click on Scheduler. And we're going to actually make a new scheduler. You obviously won't have anything over here, but we're going to say this is a test scheduler. All right, I'm going to use my Ontraport demo key. I'm going to use the Google Calendar. It is going to I didn't complete this one, so I'm going to use my ClickFix Google Calendar. And it's going to allow me to then select the available calendars. And just for sake of example, you can see that if I select a different account that I have also authorized, that there will be different calendars that are available depending on what access level that account has given. So let's go back to ClickFix and just select the main calendar here. Now, so let's run through these. The event duration, this is obviously how long you expect, in this case, a call to last. So let's say that it lasts for an hour, and we put in this in minutes, right? So 60 minutes. This is a buffer that you can put between when one call starts, or when one call ends and the next one can start. So let's say that I had a 60-minute duration, and I allowed, I wanted 15 minutes to kind of reset and get organized for the next call. I just type in 15 here. And so if somebody booked a call at 1 p.m., and it ended at 2 p.m., well, the next available call wouldn't show on the calendar until 2:15. Book intervals, this allows you to give people the option of how often you want an empty slot to be shown, as long as there's availability. So if I put in 15 here, this is, for example, being able to have somebody, giving somebody the option to book at 1, 1:15, 1:30, 1:45, and then again at the top of the hour, and so on and so forth. If I put in 10, well then it would be 10, 20, 30. How long in advance? This is set in hours. So this, for example, if I put in 24, that means that people cannot book from my calendar for the next day unless I have slots available for more than 24 hours from now. So this is useful if you would like to be able to have a little bit of notice. You, for example, don't want people coming in the middle of the night and being able to book a 7 a.m. slot if when you went to bed you didn't have any appointments and maybe you were going to sleep in or you had something else to do. By setting this book in advance buffer, you would be able to make sure that you have at least X amount of notice before somebody can book. I usually do probably about 16 hours for the most part, but this you can put however you want. Now here in date range we have two options. We have X rolling days. This is the number of how far out somebody can book in advance. So if you put 7, well then this would look at your calendar and it would show the availability over the next 7 days. If you put 2, well then it would only look over the next 48 hours, when somebody could book. Obviously, the shorter this period is, the shorter this probably needs to be, or else you're not going to get very many bookings. But normally, people say that 3 to 4 days is probably the sweet spot. Others may be okay with it as far as a week in advance. So really up to you. Or you can have this particular calendar only work during a certain date. So normally, if you're doing more kind of an evergreen type of setup, you're going to use X rolling days. Let's say that we want people to be able to book for 4 hours in advance. So there. Time zone, this is your time zone, so make sure that this is properly set. Normally it does detect it from the computer clock, but just in case, make sure this is set to your time zone, or else things can get weird. Or if you're traveling, make sure it's set to the time zone that corresponds to your food week. Now in availability, at the moment, the way this is set up is that we need to refer to a cheat sheet, which you will see on the demo page where this video appears, and also if you're watching this on YouTube, then it will be in the actual description of the video. But let's go ahead and bring that up on screen so we can take a look at how this works. So availability is basically, this is just all kind of, anything that has the pound sign here is just stuff that's commented out, just kind of an explainer. But basically, the way it comes down to is that we want to use 24-hour time format, and we want to go ahead and put in the days that were available. So if we look here where it says all 7, would be 7 a.m. to 19, which is 7 p.m., then this would say that we're available every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., with the exception of Saturday and Sunday. So basically this says Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now, we can do exceptions as the days in a comma separated list, right? So Saturday and Sunday, just like you see here. Or we can do specific dates, right? So we would do exception and we do maybe Christmas Day and New Year's and all that with the different holidays. We can also do it on separate lines if we want. That part's up to us. We can also do exceptions specific days at specific times. So, if you didn't want Wednesday between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., for example, you would type this in. So nothing on Wednesday between 2 and 8. You can have it be just an exact date. So let's imagine that this were a Wednesday as well. This could be only on, a day that you have maybe another appointment or you have to be out of the office or whatever. Just this day between 2 and 8 you're out, maybe training or whatever. You can also have it be with a date range, like if you want to block off a specific amount of time, so maybe you go on vacation for a couple weeks, you can actually set this up where, in this case, let's change this to 2021. So let's say that I was on vacation from the 3rd of January to the 6th of January. I can have that set up here. Now, this is something that you want to keep in mind when we're doing date ranges. In order to make this a little bit more international, we decided on the year, month, day format. Okay. If you're doing specific hours, then we want this in the 24-hour format, which is 0 to 23:59 basically. Okay. Again, this little cheat sheet will be on the example page that this video is posted on, and then also in the comments or in the actual description of the YouTube video as well, so you can refer to it. But once you've messed with it once or twice, it's pretty intuitive. All means yes, and then you just give the either the specific days or the times, and then you can block out exceptions for the days, or you can block out an exception that I could also say even Saturday and Sunday I want it here. Like, let's say I also wanted to maybe take a lunch break in here. I would just do exception, and it would be maybe here in Spain we eat lunch from 2 to 3, so then I can just do exception 1400 to 1500, and that of course would then say every day from 7 to 7, not the weekends, and also not during my lunch break. Once you have this kind of set up the way you want to, again, make sure you click on active, click on submit. All right. So once that submits, you'll see that it takes a little bit, and then it'll come over here since the page reloads, and you can see that the CAN test schedule is here. When you have this done, you click on view and edit again, and then you're going to scroll down here to the bottom. Once you make sure that all this is still correct, scroll down here to the bottom, and you're going to get a couple of things. First thing you're going to get is the extra short code we're going to be putting on the landing page, and this has one token that we need to use, and then we're also going to have one of the webhooks that we're after. So let's start with the webhook. All I got to do is highlight that, and then I'm going to Command or Control C to copy it. I'm going to come back into my campaigns here, and I'm going to go to the first webhook, and I'm just going to paste that into the destination URL. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I change the name here, right? And I'm going to change this because it's much easier for me later on to reference the name that are in the elements, so I know what to be updating or changing or editing. So I'm going to say add to my calendar for this one, just so it's very clear what it is. And then also in advanced settings, I'd like to bump this to at least 3. This normally when you're working with Google isn't necessary, and with our stuff it's not necessarily necessary, but it's always a good idea to allow the system to try more than just once, just in case something happens with the trigger, it can try again, right? Next thing we need to do is we need to tell the system what data to send. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually reference the documentation here And we're going to go to that login event into your calendar. And we're going to copy this over here. And then we're going to come back into the campaign and we're going to paste it in. Now, what is this saying? This is saying that the title of this event is going to be meeting with their first name and their last name, right? The email is going to equal their email, and the description is going to equal please call this person promptly, and it's going to paste in their text number, right? So this is just an example. And then the date is going to equal the date field that we've set to be the custom field that we're going to be using here. So we have to actually update at least one thing on this, right? And that one thing is going to be date equals, right? And we actually said that this one is going to be, what do we call it, appointment? Or call it scheduler, right? Demo scheduler can, right? That's a PRL. Demo scheduler, there we go. And we want to make sure that this is Unix. Leave the rest alone, insert field, all right? So with just this, it should work just fine, right? You can hard code the title to be whatever you want. If you are a little bit more paranoid about whether or not this is going to render properly, you can also use %20 to take up the spaces. But it's all, again, up to you. You're going to want to experiment with that to get the formatting right. I personally do like to use the %20, but it's not necessarily something that everybody likes to do. Email is going to say the same. And make sure that you don't type this out. Make sure that you go to the documentation and you copy and paste it in here, and then you edit these individual values. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems for sure. All right. Now, if we want to, we can also add in additional fields here. We can add in the location, for example, right? Because we want the location to show up in this. We can have the location be Zoom. We can have it be Zoom colon %20 and then actually put in a Zoom link if we want to. So it would be https zoom.com / whatever your Zoom link is, for example. And the description, I don't need the SMS number because we're not actually collecting that on the form either, so we don't know if we are going to have that for every person. We'll always say, this is a test, for example, right? And with that, this should work. So we can go ahead and save that. So now we have the add to my calendar webhook done. All right. Now, the next webhook that we need to do, remember we had two here. Next webhook we need to do is we need to actually do the one that says, populate add to calendar links, right? So that's going to be that. And the destination URL for this one, go back to documentation, and we say populate field with add to calendar links, all right? So what we need is we need to grab the destination URL, copy that in there. Now we're going to get rid of this token here. We're going to replace that. And we want it to be post, so that's all good. Now, where's our token? Well, it's the same token that we used for the first webhook. So we just copy this, and we replace this there. And what data do we send? Well, we come back to the documentation, and we go ahead and copy this example here, and then we'll edit it. All right, so the title, just for the sake of brevity here, these are the ones I'm going to copy here. For the title, what do we call it? We called it meeting with first name. Right? Call it meeting with first name. And the start is going to be the actual date time field there. scheduler, again, Unix. All right. ID is contact ID, we don't change that. Location, we said is going to be Zoom, and then you could, if you wanted to, you can put in the Zoom link here. And then the URL, this is another field that works for like Apple calendars. This, for example. And so that's zoom.com. And now we need to also add in, I believe I did, Outlook is the next one. So Outlook.com has to be Outlook.com. It can't be just Outlook or else it's not going to work. And so F equals, right? So now we have this information in here, but now we need to figure out what this F1234 is, right? And so this right here is the actual ID of the custom fields that we created. So in order to find these actual IDs for Google, for Yahoo, for Outlook, and for ICS, we actually have to go to our landing page that we created, and we're going to go to the published version of it. We're going to use the ClickFix helper to tell us what those field names are. So here we see that Google is F1884. Come back to the campaign here, and we find we're looking at Google. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 1884. Yahoo, I believe, was 85. Right, and we can see that going down the line. Yahoo, then Outlook is 1886. Right, 86, and then ICS will be 87 because we've created them in order, and so we know that it's just +1. Right, so all these are now done. So this is the minimum that you would want to, or that you have to have in here in order for this to work. But you can see from the documentation that you can also, if you need to, let's say that you're using a different object rather than just the contact object. Maybe you created a custom object that only takes in, a call request. Maybe this is part of your support system. So we give you the option to target more than just the contacts object. If you don't specify an object, it's just going to tie this to the contact record. And so you can see that the rest of it is pretty much required, right? You don't have to do descriptions and locations and all that, but it's good to include those, of course, because that's what's going to be put into the person's calendar. So with those things done, we have this. We can go ahead and hit save. And now the last thing we want to do is set up just an email that's going to go out to the contact. And we're going to do a new message in this case, and we're just going to say it is demo scheduler. And we're going to do save and edit. And we're going to just do a simple mail. And it's going to be from the contact owner, it's fine. And we're going to say, hey, booking confirmed. Of course, our name in here. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. Confirm, right? You can type whatever you want in here. To your calendar. Right, you can put whatever information you want. You can put in, the information that they submitted, more about them, more about whatever questions they may have answered on the way to this, whatever you want, right? But then after that, we're going to go ahead and just set these up so we can have the different calendars, and then let's say Apple or iCal, other, right? So these are kind of the 4 that I generally use. And then we're just going to turn these into links. I'm going to go here to other, and we're going to use the merge fields, right? So I know what this is, but let's show you how to get to those. And let's not overwrite that. Let's go ahead and just throw the merge field next to it. And let's say this was Google 2, right? And this one's going to be Yahoo 2. And you can see that these all respond to what you would think that they do. I'm going to say Outlook.com though. Outlook.com too. And this one is going to be ICS. CS2. Alright, so then I just grab this. I'm going to cut it rather than copy it. To select this and turn this into an other type. I'm going to insert that, and then when the email renders, it is going to automatically pull their specific add to calendar link and give them the ability to add it to their calendar by just clicking. I'm going to do this with all of them. And again, this is all pure personal preference. If you just want to use one, you can just use one. If you want to call this iCal and then other and have it be the same link, all completely up to you. I like to make this a little bit bigger because it's better on mobile, 16 or 18. 18 is better. And then once we have that, then we can go and save it. All right, and with that, we should be good to go with actual calendar. So I'm going to publish with the webhooks in the email. So I hit publish. And now the last thing to do is come back to our landing page and we're going to make some adjustments. Okay. Back here in ClickFix, actually, we're going to go ahead and copy this shortcode now because this is the actual shortcode that we're going to use. And we're going to come in custom code and we've got to set this up. We're going to paste that in for a second. I'm going to grab this F1883, which is the scheduler field that we want, and I'm going to put the F1883 here. So now with just this, it's not going to work. We need to also, as you know, put in the actual JavaScript that we can get from the documentation, or we can get from the start here in the app itself. But we're just going to go ahead and go to shortcodes here, and we're going to copy this. Copy this script. I'm going to drop that into our landing page at the top. Next thing I'm going to do, and this is optional, but what this does, we're going to put this in here so that there is no initial display of this code on the page and then have it disappear. Just looks a little bit cleaner. We're going to put this shortcode between this div tag here. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come, or the last two things we're going to do is we're going to come here and we are going to remove the label because we don't need the label anymore, or else it's going to look a little bit weird on the front end. And then I can go ahead and actually get rid of these because we don't need them on the actual landing page. Once I click publish, I'll go ahead and come here. Let's do a hard refresh of this page. All right, so once that reloads, go ahead and put in a test subject here. Let's try this one. And let's go ahead and select a day and time. Let's say 8 a.m. my time. Click on submit. Didn't set up a thank you page, so just going to go to the regular thank you page. Let's go into our calendar, see if that made it on there yet. Sometimes it takes a second. And let's go ahead and go into our contacts here and refresh this. All right, so now that that's loaded, go into the contact record here, let's go to the scheduler, and we can see that we did in fact make an appointment for 8 a.m. We have all these have been filled out with all the proper data for adding things to calendars. And if I bring in my email, you can see that this came in as well. And these are the links that somebody would use to go ahead and add it to their calendar. So they would click on Google, for example, and it will bring up their Google Calendar if they're signed in like I am. And they can go ahead and change the name for themselves, however they want to do it, right? Obviously, they wouldn't want to invite others or anything like that. But for the most part, when these things get sent out, people will also have it, well, at least with Apple Mail, it detects that there's a meeting scheduled, and they'll also get the invite from Google since it's going through Google. And with that, that's about it. Again, one of the cool things about this, besides the fact that you can have unlimited calendars and unlimited users just with the one account, is that you can put it behind anything you want, right? So in our particular case, on our schedule a call page, which you can get to at clickfix.io/schedule-a-call, or by clicking on the consultant expert or the support here. On this page, we have it kind of behind some selections in what we've put together with a survey here. So basically, like somebody, again, maybe they want to know a little bit more about ClickFix, well, they go ahead and fill out their information, and this puts them on my calendar. But if somebody put that they're experiencing a bug, and they fill out the rest of their information, this is now Tomas's calendar. So you can use this to set things up to assign it to different users just off of a single account, and then by using some campaigns in the background to just say, if such and such field, in this case the please choose the best one, if this field is equal to this, we'll then send it down this track to user number 1. If the answer to this question is answer number 2, then send it to user number 2. So the sky is kind of the limit with that. But as always, if you have any questions, or if you'd like some extra hand-holding and help with getting this implemented in your business, feel free to reach out to us either in the Ontraport group, or via YouTube, or directly through our website, clickfix.io.